Hello, my name is Laurie Cullen. I'm a forester. I work as research coordinator in IPE, which is the Institute for Ecological Research in Brazil. We have a huge institution in Brazil, which is the second largest NGO in Brazil. And our mission is, the conservation of the Atlantic forest. Not only forest, but also all the species, the fauna and flora that survive, that it still remains in that kind of a very endangered ecosystem. It is the most endangered ecosystem in Earth. The deforestation process was very extreme. Only about 11% of that forest is remaining in the state, but specifically in the area that we work, about 1% only is left. So only 1% of the original vegetation is left, and inside those remains it is survive like one of the most endangered primates in Earth, which is the black lion tamarin. Not only tamarins, but also other large cats, for example the jaguars and the pumas. Imagine a landscape where it's not only the protected areas, the endangered species, but also a very large number of rural people, farmers, living close to those forest edges. We have to involve them in a process. We have to involve them in a process to make sure we guarantee the future of those remaining forests. So the only way to involve them is to making sure they have a profit in the process, they have an extra income. So the way we found for them to have an income is by having them to being the leaders in the conservation process, making them provide us the seedlings or the trees we need to build those corridors. So they are like a small business operations where they are the leaders in the process of by providing us the future trees. So the way we found, okay, let's then have us as farmers, conservationist farmers, that will help them put some of that forest back. So, and that's what's really happening right now. They are farmers and they have to eat. So if they have to eat, they have to grow cassava, they have to grow beans, they have to grow corn. And that's where we also jump in, because we provide them a scheme. It's called the intercropping. They can grow the annual crops right in between the trees for a certain time. So, which means in same area, in same spot, we have this agroforestry, which we know that the animals also use. In a little bit over 10 years, we have planted 1.5 million trees. In the last year, about 300,000 trees. So we've been planting about 300,000 trees each year, and those trees go specifically in those forest corridors that help to link the forest fragments, guaranteeing the long-term survival of those endangered species. So we're trying to understand the history of the landscape. For example, we follow these large cats, such as the jaguar and the puma, and by tracking them, we understand that their home ranges, their dispersal routes, and then with that ecological information, we're able to analyze and then to make sure we put all this restoration effort in a place that the species will use in the future, and not only in a place that we think they will. Imagine that you have a huge landscape with these small patches of blocks of forest isolated. So you have a family of black lion tamarin here, another family of black lion tamarin over there, and they have to mix for genetic reasons. So that's the main impact, isolation. And because of isolation, we have inbreeding. So once we have inbreeding, you have a species that is not likely to survive in the long term. To avoid inbreeding, you need to connect the forests. The only way to connect the forests is by planting these forest corridors in between them. We imagine a scenario that we don't have to be there, that they will be able to do the managing and the breeding by itself. That's why we're putting all these corridors back in the landscape, trying to recover the history of the landscape. The lion tamarin was just downlisted from the endangered species list just last year from a critical endangered. Now it's only endangered. So we have been moving the species on the top of the list in terms of a conservation possibility. So that's how we measure our success. Looking at the earth, looking down, seeing the landscape changing and the species number increasing as well. It's biodiversity. I mean, if we talk about all biodiversity, we have to save species, and not only save species, but putting the forest back. Putting the forest back means CO2 offsetting, and we also have to think in terms of helping all the climate which is changing. 100.5 million trees is offsetting a lot of this carbon that is being thrown on Earth. So we've been helping a lot, not only in terms of saving lives, saving people, saving all this biodiversity, but also helping with this big issue now that we're talking about, which is the climate change. We want to put that forest back, at least 20% of that forest back in the landscape. 20%, why? Because that's the number that the researchers says that if we have that amount of percentage back, not only lion tamarins but our other species will be able to survive in the very long term.